Okay.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I was just waiting for the screen to unshare there, or the frozen screen. So, welcome everybody to the. Very sad to say, the last Finance and Performance Subcommittee of East Northamptonshire Council on the 22nd of February 21. I'll go straight into the business, which is item 1. Apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chairman, as all members are present.
Okay. Minutes of the meeting on the 14th of December as a true record. Everybody content? Those who were present?
Yep.
Lots of nods, so I'll take that as okay. Okay, any declarations of interest? Item 3. I shall just check participants just for hold on a second just to make sure. No, as you appreciate, I can't see everybody at once, but I'll take that as a no. I left it long enough. And questions from members. And
No questions, Chairman.
Right answer. So, okay, so moving straight into the business, we've got the quarterly performance report, quarter 3, item 5, and that's Samantha. Evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. So I've got the performance report here this evening, which covers the quarter 3 performance. So that's following our performance clinics that were held over Microsoft Teams. And as always, it's a highlight report showing the performance indicators which are consistently underperforming or have a government target. Also establishment figures and areas of achievement. So I'll go straight to the appendix and just give a quick overview of each page. So there's a pie chart on page 1, which shows the numbers and percentages of all key priority performance indicators, which were overperforming within their tolerance band or underperforming within quarter 3. And it also shows indicators where we had data missing. So apologies, there was a slight error here in the report. In that chart should only show that there were just 2 which were missing data this quarter, not 3. But we'll look at both of those a bit later on. So on pages 2 and 3, you'll find the measures which have been underperforming for 2 or more consecutive quarters. So page 2, that shows the household waste sent for reuse or recycling. And that's shown by the orange segments on that chart. And that's the bit that's underperforming against the target. But together with the composting figures, which are shown by the green segments, the overall target for both of those has actually been met. On to page 3, you can see that there were 5 supplementary reports during quarter 3. One was delayed to ensure the full impact of COVID-19 was included. 2, because they required decisions from earlier meetings before they could be finalised. And the other 2, because officers were required to work on the preparation of the North Northants budget. So secondly, on this page, we're still not meeting the target of 95% on purchase orders being raised before the invoice date. So that's sitting at just below 87%. And we've now got a comment for this one, which says that it has remained challenging for the target of 95% to be met this year. But despite the impact of COVID-19 on our resource availability across the council this year, performance against this measure has actually still remained in line with previous year's data. And the message about the need to raise a purchase order for all orders continues to be reinforced at the quarterly performance clinics. Hopefully everyone's happy with the comments on that page. So we'll move on to page 4. So this is one of the performance indicators which was missing data, and obviously because leisure centres have been shut, we don't have a customer satisfaction score this time round. The other indicator which was missing this quarter was the amount of interest we were liable to pay on overdue invoices. Based on the fact that there was only 1 late paid invoice during quarter 3, that wouldn't have been very much, but I can confirm we didn't actually get charged for whatever that interest was in any case. On to page 5, we've got the overperforming measures. So the first 2 have government set targets. So these are the planning applications processed within the required timeframes, and both are performing at around 90%, so well above the 70% target. And then we've got the recycling loss to contamination, which is here to just show how much it's improved throughout this year. So it went from red to blue, and now it's in the green. On to page 6, we've got measures which are within tolerance. So these are planning application decisions overturned at appeal following a 2-year period, and they're both well below the 10% target. So all planning measures with their government set targets are performing really, really well this time.
That's remarkable.
On to page 7, we've got a graph to show the invoice payment measures. So only one invoice was not paid within the government target of 30 days since the start of the financial year, so from April to December. And all local suppliers invoices were paid within 10 days for Q3. On page 8, we have employment statistics. So the table at the top of this page shows us the picture from April to December. So it shows that 2.45 days were lost on average per full-time equivalent member of staff over that 9-month period. And it breaks down to 1.41 long-term days and 1.04 short-term days. And you can also see how that compares to Wellingborough. So these sickness figures equate to 427.52 days lost to sickness between April and December for all East Northants Council employees, which is still much lower than you'd usually see. And the bar chart below shows the split by service area for those 9 months from April to December. On page 9, we have staff turnover by service area for those 9 months, April to December, and it shows that there were only 4 leavers throughout that time. And then you can see the trend quarter by quarter on the line graph below. On to page 10, we have a chart to show the headcount, FTE and vacancies figures. So based on full-time equivalent posts, the orange segment on the chart shows the amount that are vacant, and then the green section are the amount in post. And you can see from the table below that there were 6 new starters that came into post during Q3. And then the final pages, 11 to 13, all show the areas of achievements across all service areas. So I won't read them all out, but just to pick on a few of them. We've got the hard work by the revenues and benefits and customer services teams in rolling out the test and trace support payments. The recovery through Enterprise Hub at Rushton Lakes was opened in Q3. The Office 365 was rolled out by ICT. There was a large increase in the planning workload, but as we've seen above, the applications are being processed in really, really good time still. That was a great achievement for them. And then finally, the hard work in environmental services with keeping up to date with the COVID legislation and carrying out interventions has also been recognised. So that concludes the Q3 performance report. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got one, Chairman, if possible.
Okay. Yep, Councillor Jenny, and then Councillor Brackenbury raised his hand. I think I caught there. So Councillor Jenny, Councillor Brackenbury, and then Councillor Lewis.
I'm a bit surprised at the performance of planning management, seeing as they've struggling to get through their agendas. For instance, last Wednesday's night meeting had 13 items on the agenda and only 2 were cleared. And that's not the first time that that's happened by any means. So I am somewhat surprised that they are being classified as well as they are.
Was that just a comment, Councillor Jenny?
That's just a comment, because I don't think anybody can do anything about it apart from as a note that we are concerned about their performance.
Okay, I don't think Samantha's got anything to add to that by the looks of it.
Sure,
So
she-
I will swiftly move on to Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much, Samantha, for a very clear run through some quite pleasing indicators. I just would like to make the comment that the planning policy on the other side of planning team have been working extremely hard in this quarter on getting the local plan up to submission, especially in view of one of our major site allocations having to be revised pretty much for last moment. And so while having this quick run through of achievements, I just think that the planning policy team should have a particular pat on the back for all their hard work. And otherwise, I think that's a very good report showing the achievements that East Northamptonshire Council have been delivering throughout the years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll make sure that that's added onto the list of achievements if it's not there already.
And I'm sure Councillor Brackenbury and I will comment at the Civic last council meeting when the planning policy meeting would have had its last meeting, and we would have agreed and sent off the local plan, because it would have been done and dusted, and then it would be a real sense of achievement to celebrate, and we will certainly note that, won't we, Councillor Brackenbury? We
certainly will, and indeed, and in answer to your point, Samantha, yes, it has been touched on in the various areas of achievement, but it's sort of touched on in various indicators. So as an overall pat on the back, no, it hasn't, but yeah, but it is there. So I note that it's already been recognised. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A little bit, excuse me, a little bit like John Richardson when I joined the council, where it didn't matter what the subject was, John always used to say something, even if it was to say, "I agree."
Oh, what
back a few years there. Yes, a good set of figures there, Samantha. You know, I think are well done, and it's good to see what you're taking forward. As far as Councillor Jenny's comment, sorry about this, is concerned, then it certainly looks as though some things are being held up. But looking through the number of applications that are going through, I find it quite extraordinary, the number that are actually going through at the moment. So, as far as Councillor Brackenbury's comment is concerned about planning policy, having recently been put on this particular committee by our beloved leader here, I would say I've gone through some of the longest meetings I've sat through for many a long year, and yes, I think the planning policy staff have worked very well getting all the stuff through. It's been quite good, so I think they could do with a little mention. But by and large, Mr. Chairman, no, just to say a good set of figures and and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And I remember you questioned to go on to planning policy, especially to get a fuller breadth of council activity before we stop. So I'm sure you'll thank me later.
All of life goes across that committee.
On that note, Samantha, thank you very much. I think you highlighted the achievements, and obviously you don't need to go through them, but we all got them, and there's been some really good achievements there. So it just leaves me to thank you for your reports in the past, and I'm sure you don't want to see out the rest of the meeting. So thank you very much. And if members are happy to know the report.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
all right. Thank you all. Thanks, Samantha. All right then. Right.
Good night, Samantha.
Item 6, budget monitoring report to 31st of December.
Thank you, Chairman. So as members will be used to by now, this is our budget monitoring report, and it goes up to the period 9, so 31st of December. As detailed there at section 2, the annual budget that was originally approved was 12.5 million, but there's been a number of changes in year. So table 1 details that the current budget as at period 9 was 13.2 million. Table 2 details all the supplementary estimates that have been approved and drawn down in this quarter, and they're detailed there for your information. At section 2.6, we move into the revenue update, and the estimated outturn as at period 9 is an overspend of £1.1 million. However, that's almost entirely attributable to additional COVID costs. So table 3 details this by service area, and then there's more details on those individual areas in Appendix 1. As part of the outturn position at section 2.10, there's a vacancy factor, and table 4 details the performance against that, currently showing an additional saving of £109,000. Table 5 details the significant variances to date to period 9 that are forecasted. And as you can see in the top part of the table, the majority of the additional costs are attributable to the COVID-19 position, which is covered in more detail over the page in section 2.16. The net revenue budget pressure is estimated to be £1.8 million, and then there's a further 35k pressure within the capital programme. However, against this, the council has been allocated by central government a non-ring-fenced grant covering the majority of that of £1.2 million. It was expected when we reported this at period 6 that the final allocation of that budget would be brought to the budget working party group and then reported back to this committee for sign-off. However, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, the position around COVID, lockdown 3 and the various grants that are going through, the situation is still quite volatile. So therefore, we're not at a position to formally review that situation. So the committee is asked to note the current estimates against those items in table 5. As set out in table 6 below, when all known sources of funding are considered to fund COVID-19 that the council has considered, we're currently forecasting a pressure from reserves of 195k that the council has agreed to fund the recovery through enterprise project. And as section 2.23 notes, although there is a further paper on this agenda that considers changing that funding, this monitoring report does not reflect that because obviously it's not been discussed as yet. So it reports as is, as what was confirmed at council. So taking all of those items into consideration, the additional grants, section 2.24 details that overall the council at period 9 is predicting a contribution to reserves of 209k, and that's further detailed in table 7. So I'll take a pause there, Chairman, for any questions.
You know me well there. I was just about to pause to split it there, so thank you for that. So I think it's always useful to split the revenue and capital part of the report, so thank you for that. So any questions from members in relation to all the reporting there? Everybody's content with the updates? Yeah.
Just make a comment, Chairman, that I think we've got out of the COVID situation very, very lightly in terms of financial effects, and you know, all the hard work that's gone in, particularly revs and bends and all of that sort of stuff. Everybody should be congratulated on their performance on this. I know we haven't finished, and I know this probably is going to go on, according to the Prime Minister, to the middle of the year. But to get away with as little as we have, considering where we started from, the first thoughts where we were likely to be left, I think it's absolutely remarkable.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jenny. Amy, in relation to the reporting, I think when COVID started, we didn't actually include the government support because it wasn't necessarily there yet, and we were going through the different phases, but we were taking the hits and reporting on those through because obviously they were the council reserves and council finances we were using, so we had to obviously quite rightly show it in that respect. As the government grants that we've had are still outside the budget we set as a council, and obviously as there's going to be no more reporting of our budget situation before this council ends, how's that all going to be reflected going forward in the future in a reporting structure in relation to a lot of this sits outside the council budget?
Yes, I'm not sure, to be honest. It has now been reflected in the COVID returns that we are producing, that the government requests every month. And obviously the situation with COVID and the grants that are coming through is a moving target. So I'm assuming there will be some formal process of reporting that back as we move forward.
Okay, well, thank you. If you're not aware, and like normal, so I might as well ask. And I think obviously everybody's facing the same position, but then obviously not all the councils around the country are obviously migrating to a new organisation, and I'm just not sure how, from audit purposes and general purposes, how that's going to be reported from each of the old sovereign councils in relation to going forward. Glenn, have you got any? Glenn, sorry.
If I could just come in, because I might be able to answer some of that, or at least give a bit more clarity. Obviously, with the ceasing of East Northamptonshire Council at the end of March, any of the outturn reporting and the production of those statement of accounts for the existing sovereign organisations, they will be reported through the Audit and Governance Committee at Northamptonshire Council. So there is a formal mechanism where those will get reported through and agreed. But obviously it'll be the new council rather than the old council at that time.
Okay, thank you for that. And I suppose at the moment, not this necessarily the concern of this subcommittee, but in general, Glenn, are you aware most councils around the country are kind of treating the government grants in the same way in relation to the use and way it's all being reported?
Yes, they certainly are. Although a number of authorities around the country are still facing very big pressures in relation to COVID. The position we've got, as is reported in the report you're seeing this evening, is that we are pretty much, subject to some decisions that you might make later, in a balanced position by the end of the year forecast. Which is very good, of course. Which is very positive. Expect to say. Yeah. Particularly given where we were earlier in the year when COVID first came into the financial projections. Yes, very much so. Okay, Amy, you better crack on before someone thinks of something to ask for the sake of it. So I think we left it long enough. So
okay, so moving on then to the capital overview. So table 8 details the approved capital programme plus the development pool of 4.6 million. And then below, table 9 details the transfers into the programme over the year that have been approved. And the full details of the capital programme are detailed for members at Appendix 2. And then table 10 shows you the funding of the capital programme, and as at the end of period 9, a forecast underspend is predicted of 651k. So I'll pause there at the end of capital.
Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chairman. You were worried about me. I've been quiet for too long.
I was worried. I was.
Of course. Table 10, Amy. Mm-hmm. I know we're doing some quite substantial capital machinations at the moment, and I do notice the item of 536,000 for borrowing. Could you just remind me what we were borrowing that 536 for? That was purely for asset management, or is that for any specific purpose?
I believe it's just for the asset management works. There is a little note just below the table. It's quite small, but it's as yet to be determined.
Okay. Okay, but it's all been taken into consideration anyhow. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, talking about yet to be determined, are we actually forming a position on how we're going to treat the enterprise centre before, as this is the last finance performance? Is it actually going to any particular committee before the end of this council?
I'll defer to Glenn.
Are you referring to the decision on whether to externally borrow or internally borrow for the enterprise centre, or are you talking about the enterprise centre in general?
In general, but I think we're actually determined to keep it within internal borrowing, but I don't think we ever actually noted the actual final position that we were going to take from recollection. And as this is the last meeting, I just wonder when we're going to actually make that call.
Well, essentially, the position that we're reporting within the capital there is that, and the rest of the finance monitoring, is that we'll be doing it internally as East Northamptonshire. There will be a choice for North Northamptonshire whether it wants to externally borrow for that proportion or whether it wants to continue to internally borrow. But from East Northamptonshire's perspective, we will internally borrow for it.
Okay, so we're kind of leaving the final decision beyond this council then to make that final call then.
It provides a little bit more flexibility for North Northamptonshire's capital planning purposes.
Okay, thank you for that. Yep.
Can I just ask a further question on that, Steve?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
please. As it stands at the moment, the only monies left to be paid are the retention monies, which are due in probably May, June time, something like that. I can't remember the exact time of the conclusion of the job. Presumably, we have made provision within our figures for the release of that money at a later date. Yes, we have, and they are and as they will be falling into next financial year, they form part of the capital programme for North Northamptonshire. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Glenn. And somewhere in the 600 odd pages of the meeting for Thursday night, it's in there in some line somewhere, I assume. Okay.
I haven't found it.
Yeah, it's buried in the depths. Okay, I'll just have to look harder for that. Okay, so and thank you all for that reporting. Thanks, Amy. So in relation to the recommendations, because you've wrapped up on your report now, haven't you?
There's a final section on reserves.
I thought I missed a bit. Go on, carry on. Go on.
So the final position on reserve just takes into account the revenue and capital position. We were forecasting a contribution from reserves at the start of the year of 91k, but obviously we're now forecasting a contribution to reserves of 209, meaning a net contribution of 118k. And at the bottom in table 13, it details the overall total reserves for ENC predicted at the end of period 9.
Thank you, Amy. Why should I even miss that bit out? So I think you're saying year in, year out, as we normally do, we're making a contribution to reserves and we're going to leave this council in a very good position. I'm sure that's what you're saying. Absolutely.
Indeed.
Okay, so no change there, but well done for everybody on that. I'll make an obviously a contribution to reserves year on year on a serious note. So in relation to 13 and 13.1 A to D, they're all for noting. So rather than read everyone out, I'm sure as they're all for noting, if everybody's happy with those and happy to take them on block. Yeah, if I can have lots of nods and propose, but just show of hands then if everybody's happy.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's that report. Okay, so moving on to item 7 then, which is the usual Treasury Management report to 31st of December.
Okay, thank you again, Chairman. So this report provides an update on Treasury Management for quarter 3, so October to December 2020. Sections 2.2 to 2.5 set out the UK economic summary provided by the Council's Advisors Link Group. Of course, it's still dominated by the economic damage caused by the coronavirus outbreak. The Bank of England took emergency action in March to cut the bank rate down to 0.1%, and at its meetings in August, September, and then again in December, it decided to leave this rate unchanged. Link Group have also provided a summary of other world economies, and that's detailed at Appendix 1. And forecast interest rates are detailed at section 2.6 with no expected increase in bank rates up until the forecast period end. A summary of gilt yields and PWLB rates are detailed in sections 2.9. Members will recall we set out on our last update about HM Treasury announcing its increase in of 1% over gilts to all PWLB rates. And the Treasury then confirmed that the additional 1% rise would be dropped from the 26th of November as long as authorities did not purchase assets for yield purposes in its 3-year capital programme. So this guidance was received in time for the Northants budget, so that was taken into consideration at the point they set their budget. Section 3 sets out the Council's annual investment strategy and performance against it. Section 3.3 highlights average cash balances remained above the budgeted levels at 35 million. Again, due to the Council temporarily holding funds from central government to passport over to local businesses and individuals for support in the form of COVID support grants. Section 3.4 details how the actual cash held at the 31st of December was invested, split between fixed deposits, call accounts and money market funds, and the details of the portfolio held is at section 4.1. At section 4.2, the return on the Council's performance for Q3 was 0.25%, which is 0.29 points over the 7-day London Interbank bid rate. The forecast outturn for investment income is detailed at section 4.4 and is under budget by 72,000. Again, this is due to the economic downturn caused by COVID-19, and maturing investments have obviously had to be reinvested at much lower rates than forecasted. Section 5 of the report confirms the Council has complied with prudential indicators, which are shown at Appendix 2. The delegation to temporarily increase the counterparty limit with the DMA was used on the 15th of December, as highlighted in section 6. It was increased by 2 million to 12 million in total for 3 days before returning to the 10 million limit on the 18th of December. And this was all signed off in line with the approvals as per the Treasury Management Strategy that was updated by full Council on the 13th of May. So that concludes the report. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Amy. Any questions from members? Councillor Brackenbury.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Amy. Again, another very clear run through of a very stormy scene, and I would just like to say that I think that in spite of the remarkable changes in bank rates and the disappointing return on investment income, I think, as usual, our Treasury management team have managed to pull good stuff out of the bag. Of course, it's not the budgeted 0.8 that we set a long time ago when COVID was but an idea rather than something else. So I think we've done remarkably well. One question I do have, and perhaps you can help me here. I know we've got a fixed term deposit with HM Treasury of 4.5 million at apparently at a rate of minus 0.04, which assumes that we're paying to warehouse money with the government, which is never a very good idea. We must not give them any more than they need. So am I mistaken here?
I will double check that for you, because yes, that doesn't look right. My apologies.
Not at all, not at all. But I was just a little bit. We certainly don't want it leaking out to the Treasury. They're rather good at.
I will double
very
check.
competent anyway. Okay, that's terrific. Well, look, thank you. I think it's a very clear report. Very, and I think that we've done well. I think we've somewhat done well because of the increased cash balances, which have helped as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bradbury. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, a good report, and I mean it's good to see the financial situation. But of course, this council's very close to not being here. So my question is, looking at the total amount that we've got invested, is if we, and I've asked something like this before. If we take out whatever prepayments there are, whatever money is committed that we know we're going to spend, and what COVID grants we might lose, I mean, what is the net amount on April the 1st that will go from East Northants residents into North Northants? Because it seems like an awful lot of money, which could do an awful lot of good in East Northants, rather than necessarily subsidising the other authorities, particularly since we know that East Northants is probably going to pay a bit more than most when things are brought into line. Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that one, Chair?
Yes, I thought it might come up somewhere along the line. It's been raised a different kind of way, but I thought it may come up this evening. Yes.
In terms of the ultimate, what is the position? Essentially, it will be the council's reserves that will transfer over to the new council. And that will be its underlying cash balance or core cash balance that will transfer over to Northamptonshire. The actual cash balance will be a bit higher because, as you pointed out, Councillor Lewis, there will be some areas of income of our working capital that we will still need to process through our accounts here at East Northamptonshire, as opposed to ones that get transferred over. So I hope that answers the question.
But well, thank you. I mean, have you got an idea of what that figure is going to be? It's obviously going to be a few tens of millions, by the looks of it.
It will be, and if I just quickly referring back to the previous report, in the budget monitoring, the reserves position is set out in there.
Yeah, I forgot to ask the question then. I hadn't turned the page over quick enough.
It's on table 13.
Yeah, yes, I realised when I flicked the pages over after it finished. Yes, I mean, it is a pity that £20 million
expected to be at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think we should have done a little bit more with that, but we're where we are, as a certain person always says. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Glenn.
Okay, thank you for that. And swiftly moving on then in relation to the recommendation, as ever. So it's 16.1. So it's to note the Treasury management performance. So if everybody's happy with that. Okay, that's fine then. So, okay, so that's item done. So now item 8, which is the very clear, simple breakdown of government support funding in relation to COVID, which is absolutely clear. So, Lucy, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Well, I described the grant payments for businesses as all the schemes as a bit like the okey cokey. Businesses are in one grant scheme, another one gets announced, they're out of that and they're in a different one, and that's how it's been all the way along, to be honest. We had the November lockdown and there was obviously grants to be paid out then. I think what complicated things for East Northamptonshire, well, Northamptonshire, is that after the national lockdown, we were placed into Tier 2. We were in that for about 24 days. And then we went from Tier 2 to 3 to 4 to the second lockdown in a matter of about 10 days. But for all those different tiers, we had to pay the grants out. We could pay them in a lump sum, but for reporting purposes, we had to show the different tiers. So on our systems, we had to show 5 days at X amount, another 5 days at another tier at another amount for all the reporting that we have to do for government. So that slowed down the process as well. For the January lockdown, what further caused issues for us and what made businesses start chasing grants and such was government announced that we were going to go into national lockdown tier 5 as they called it, but they didn't provide us with guidance on administering the grants for a week and a half after they announced it to the public. So we couldn't set any process up in place because we were waiting for the guidance. So that again delayed things. But I'm happy to say now that we've completely caught up with all the grants for that national lockdown during January that ended on the 15th. Well, where the grant ended on the 15th of February, and we're processing grants on the day that they come in now for any extras that are coming after that date. On top of that, what we'd been doing for businesses is once we'd awarded all the grants, because they were for various periods, rather than just give people a lump sum money in their bank, we'd actually send them an email, a breakdown of every grant they've been paid, what period for and the amount, so it's quite clear to them. So in the future, they didn't need to come back to us regarding that. As a part of our online application, where we recorded all the details of what we needed to report back to government, including bank details as well, we verified. And we also put within our declaration that if these grant schemes continue, we could roll them on without the need for a further application as long as they declared that they were still entitled to it. So that's taken some administration out of it future on. So tonight, when the follow-on grant scheme's just been announced, I think they've actually learned from actually informing us, because 20 minutes before the announcement was made, we had the guidance come through in the inbox and the amount of money that we're going to be given to pay those out. And so tomorrow we'll be able to work with the team about rolling those payments on, and they're going to do the new grants from the 15th of February when the last grant ran out, right up until the 31st of March, a 44-day period. So I've got to look into the detail because I've only skimmed it, but it looks like we'll be able to make a lump sum payment again. So that would be good, because obviously Revs and Bens have got annual billing testing this week and actually live billing this weekend. Business rates, bills and stuff. Business rates is going to have to be delayed with billing because further announcements are being made on the 3rd of March about possibly extended retail relief and things like that. So we've had to delay business rates billing, but council tax billing will go out. So our teams are going to be very busy in the forthcoming weeks. So it's good that we can make these roll-on payments as one-offs, because then we won't have to revisit them every fortnight like it used to be. So the summary on in table 2.1 gives all the different grant schemes that we've been paying out and what we've paid to date. And although it says 2.8 million, that's we've probably got another £1 million to add on to that now that we've paid out since this report was written. Obviously, we're operating a discretionary scheme as well, which Greg's team are dealing with. But we've got quite a good governance structure on that. What we're asking to see, because there's a discretionary element, we've got a grant panel set up to sign those off, and if people need additional funds in top of other schemes that they've received, obviously that gets discussed with Glenn as well. Yes, so I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for that, Lucy, because and all serious notes about making it very clear in relation to all the different schemes and which ones are still open and which ones are closed. I think this paper itself has been and the paper in the revenue reporting has been very, very useful, and also we appreciate, or there's certainly been an appreciation of where some MPs were jumping up and down, well, not jumping over, but across the country about councils holding on to these grants. But it's quite quite clear in my mind that it wasn't just about shoving the money out, and there has to be a process and accountability to follow through. So I think we did the right thing in relation just to holding on for a while, and I hope people realise the reason for doing that rather than just sending the money out. And I think it has to be accountable for, and it will be somewhere along the line. And as you go through the reporting here, I haven't picked up on the announcements in relation to the funding this evening until the end of March. But in relation to the ARG that's ongoing until next year, I assume that that's completely separate then in relation to our discretion. And as you've just said, what's been announced today is to cover this current lockdown till the end of March. Is that right? So that's completely separate to the flexibility in relation to the ARG amount, which is still
it does. The further £2 million that's going to go to for the mandatory closed scheme is purely for the mandatory grants. The ARG scheme, which is the discretionary one, that money was set early on and was an upfront payment to last us through to the next financial year as well. So yeah, that pot's there, and then anything unspent will be incorporated into Northants discretionary grant fund, where all the economic development teams will get together and work on a new the scheme on what to spend the money on post vesting day.
So I'm sorry, I don't see any other hands up, so I'm hopefully, not chairman's discretion as such. All right, then I wasn't hogging it. Okay, I'll come to everybody. One final thing from me then, in relation to all the other grants, and I appreciate you got closed next to them and on the various different tables and stuff. Are all those other ones now closed, and it's only the one announced today that's still live? Is that no? It's still going.
No. Right. So although they're called closed grants, it means closed business grants, not that the scheme's closed.
Right.
And that's and then the open grant it's not that the grant scheme's open, it's for businesses that are still open that have been affected by the closure of the closed businesses. It is really complicated. So all the schemes are still open, and they will be till the 31st of March. That's the date we've been given at the moment. So we haven't had to close any of the closed schemes.
Okay, well, that's made it a lot clearer. So thank you, Lucy. Thank you for that. Makes me look completely numpty on that one. But yes, okay. So they're all still open. Right, fair enough. Yeah. I shall quickly move on to other questions. Okay, Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Jenny.
I was going to say how clear everything is until you made those last remarks, Lucy. But I would like to say thanks there, Lucy, and congratulations really to yourself and to your team for getting on top of such a complicated situation. And I've seen a couple of these analyses that you sent out summarising grants, which I must admit really does clarify the situation, because it's very difficult for folks out there to know, just what's going on. So well done, and well done to your whole team. And although this is a very short report, I think it doesn't indicate the amount of work that's gone behind this in order to produce it. So that's thanks again, Lucy. That's all I've got to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree with that on that front, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Jenny.
Yeah, well, it's praise Lucy night, quite frankly, because we're well aware that there have been no risks taken with us sending anything out, and it's abundantly clear that in certain other places there have been some risks taken. I just wanted to question or understand the fourth column in this table on 2.1. Number of businesses supported. You've got a cumulative total of 1,443. Is that 1,443 different businesses, or do some of them double up?
Yeah, some of them will double up through some of the schemes. Not all of them, but yeah, some of them will.
Okay, well, I won't ask you which ones.
No, please don't. I've done enough reporting for government. I don't need to do any more.
Okay, as long as I don't go and say that, well, we supported 1,443 businesses and get shot down because I've misinterpreted. That's all.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
Okay, on that note, and moving on, and again, so as everybody passes on their thanks, Lucy, for all the hard work in relation to that, and on obviously the economic development team as well. 13.1 is obviously to note the updates regarding the grant scheme. So everybody happy to note? Yeah. Okay, and thank you, Lucy, on that. So item 9, which is further reporting in relation to what certainly we've done in particular in relation to COVID and business support. Greg, recovery for enterprise update, item 9.
Thank you, Chair. Right, just take you through that report. Let's get it up on the screen. Yes, really provide an overview and update with regard to the Recovery Through Enterprise, which is the Council's programme for supporting economic recovery across the district, but also now, as we move forward towards April the 1st, it is eventually being embraced by the whole of North Northants. So that's a major step now that Corby and Kettering are now on board. So we're all pointing in the same direction and looking to drive this forward. So I think that's a major achievement that we've got there eventually. You'll just see the note, just to confirm what we just talked about, the £32 million and increasing in terms of the amount of support that we've given to the economy and the amount of investment that will bring into the economy and the amount of spend that will bring, which is an added value element in terms of the local multiplier effect. With regard to the new collaborations, obviously everything's going from strength to strength with the working with our partners at the university, at SEMLEP, at the FSB, and with the Chamber of Commerce and others to really drive forward the support programme. In particular, the Federation of Small Business are saying this is one of the top initiatives in the country. We've now got, on the back of our programme, 85 new members that have joined across East Northants, with a view that it will provide them with long-term support and networking to help recover and grow the businesses going forward. I think that's a major achievement. Also, looking in section 1.2, we've been doing work with the life science sector to really a strong marker down to what needs to be done to understand what the sector needs to grow in the area as an opportunity sector, and some early indication on some of our developments, particularly Rushden East, of what more work needs to be done there by the consortium to take that to move that proposition forward. We've also been working extremely closely with the Oxford Cambridge Arc and pushing the Green Arc and the position of Chelveston as part of that, and that still is ongoing in terms of actually championing that at a regional and national level, and that's got some significant traction now. We've also, as you mentioned before, we've got the hub at Rushden Lakes, which opened for some time before Christmas, and it's been locked down for a month or so, but it's looking to open again at the start of March, with a view that we could well go into next year, but I'll come on to that a bit later. And then there's also a lot of work continues with the councils. Obviously, they've initially it was to reopen the high streets, now it's to close the high streets, and now it's to open it again. So that work is still underway, and there's a fortnightly meeting now with the town councils to really start to understand what that will look like as a lockdown eases over the coming weeks and months. So over the next 4 months, I think, or so, as you move into North Northants, there's a real focus now on the fast track job match, which is run out of the recovery hub at Rushden Lakes, but also online through a number of social media platforms, and that's really starting to get some traction as well in terms of linking the employers together, in terms of those companies who are amidst of the current situation, are looking to grow still, and also looking at those people who are facing unemployment. That's a major initiative that will start to accelerate over the coming weeks and months, as will the new shop front. And there's a report now that's being put up to Northants to see whether they want to continue it, because at the moment the lease goes up to the 31st of March, as with the contract of employment for the staff, and we're looking to extend that for an extra year. So we've done a deal with the Crown Estate that will give us a rent, rates and service charge free period for a year, and so that will mean for us is we'll have to staff it and run it. So that is, it's a better deal than we've got at the moment. So there's a view that there's hope that that will be accepted by Northants, and we can extend the great work that we're doing through the Recovery Through Enterprise. Another particular piece of work that's a highlight is the work with the TV and film industry, and that's looking at the way in which we start work with the sector. And it's an emerging sector in this part of the world, but we're working with Screen Northants to really start to bring together a website that starts to spotlight all of the assets in our area for filmmaking, and that will be again an emerging sector that will look to drive forward the new Northants Council. Up to the current day now, we've got a business festival that started this week, which is all online, but it's a week of activity to encourage a business startups and growth and recovery and networking. And there's a program that the team are running on that for this week, and it's something that has gained a lot of local, regional and national attention. So that's live this week, and there's a range of events that are going on as part of that. And then, yeah, as I said, when I started, one of the major achievements is we've actually got Recovery Through Enterprise as the brand, a mantra for now for Northants, and the Northants Economic Development team is now looking at that, and that will include looking at a grant scheme using the ARG grant we just talked about. We've got £2.7 million, £2.73 million of ARG, of which we've spent about just over 545,000. I reckon by the end of March we'll have spent about 800 grand on grants. So there's going to be roughly 2 million we're putting into the pot for Northants. So I reckon there's between £6 and £8 million that Northants will have to spend on economic recovery. So I think in itself that would be a challenge to spend that amount of money on economic recovery in such a short period of time. But I think the good news is all the hard work we've done in the last year through Recovery Through Enterprise will give that program a head start, because we've got a range of programs already underway. So that's the overview. I'll pause there, Chair, if there's any particular questions about the context or the update.
Thank you for that, Greg, and it is very good news that all our partners are coming on board across Northamptonshire now. I think it's certainly appreciated, this council and the members here in this meeting here, that I think you in particular hit the ground running in relation to the Recovery Through Enterprise, and we're certainly the first council in the area to really kick-start and get in quick on that. And obviously we had very good support from the County Council and Wellingborough Borough Council. So it is very good to hear that finally, at long last, we're getting support from the other councils, which is actually needed, because as you say, there's some really good initiatives there in relation to the recovery, and if there's very little time to spend that money as we come out of this, then as you say, there's, as detailed in all this report, there's a lot of initiatives been put in place in relation to help businesses in relation to that recovery, as detailed. So I'm sure it's appreciated, but thanks anyway. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, my papers are on top of my laptop, which is where I need to unmute myself, so I have to dig. Luckily, it's not the Shadow Authority meeting, or you'll be here on Thursday. Thank you, Greg. And I think, like many of us, I am lost in awe at your enthusiasm. I mean, you are the Tigger of East Northants. You bounce around. It's you've got lots of enthusiasm, lots of energy, lots of ideas. And that's terrific. My question is, how are we doing? I mean, how are we doing for the actual support and take up from local businesses and local people? I mean, I appreciate that you're saying there's a lot of enthusiasm about this or that, which is great. But have we got any sort of idea, any figures or any idea of what the actual local business community and economic community are coming back to us with? And I do appreciate, before you answer, that we are in a lockdown position, so I know it's going to be extremely difficult to completely gauge things. But it would be interesting to see what feedback we're getting, and certainly I welcome your online business festival week. That sounds a jolly good idea. And again, it would be interesting to see what feedback. As I say, this isn't an answer, Greg, particularly for tonight, but going forward, it will be very interesting to see how the market, the business world, reacts to some of these initiatives. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Councillor. Just quickly then on that, I mean, we've got some metrics that are coming back of the work. I mean, obviously I mentioned the FSB. We've had, I think as of today, 84 people take up that offer. So that's 84 businesses out of a stock of about 3,500. But it's those in most need. So they're seeing a value in joining a network and joining the membership. But I think I think our membership before that was about 110, and they only get about 5 a year normally. So to actually really push that, and it gives you a sense of the importance of that particular network and the importance of that support. Looking at the Rushden Lake shop, we were having about between 90 and 120 people a day coming through, and that's exactly what we hope for in terms of location. You're just getting people because of where we are coming through the door, so they get a chance to see that. And then also, I think what's been a really good metric is the business grants, and that's one of the key advantages why the economic development team has been working on that, is that we've seen, I would say, roughly now, about 200 businesses through that process, and that gives us a direct conversation, which we don't normally get. So those ones have been helped through the FSB, through being referred to the university, to Chambers of Commerce, to the LEP. So that gives you a sense of the metrics that we're working at. I think as part of Northants, what we should see is a business plan for the economic development function that will have these sorts of metrics and a performance framework that will start to understand what parts of the economy and which sectors are supported. Obviously, there's going to be about 12,000 businesses plus across Northants, and you're not going to reach them all. But if you actually have some sort of contact with at least 5%, then I think that's quite a good metric. And we've more than exceeded that over the last year as part of Recovery to Enterprise.
Okay, thank you, and that's quite clear. I mean, you don't need to reach every business in Northamptonshire. So what we're looking for are the startups, the ones that are growing, or the ones that are in difficulties. So, I mean, that is, or at least those are your primary market. So certainly that is encouraging, and thank you very much for some quick off the top metrics on that. That's quite helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Councillor Lewis, and then Councillor Jenny.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And yes, thanks, Greg. As commented, I do very much admire your enthusiasm, and getting these things going has not really been the easiest of things, particularly under the circumstances we had from COVID. And I think really, you should be congratulated there for perseverance, and it's good to see the other authorities starting to realise that some of the things that you've been doing are well worth supporting. And I think with as we get out of this COVID situation, then all this work is going to start paying off. Yeah. Very well, and I wish you every success in your endeavours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Well said. Councillor Jenny.
Thank you, Greg. Well, yes. Very well done. Thoroughly enjoyed reading this report. Very welcoming to hear that the others are starting to join in. My greatest concern is that amongst the politicians, we're still not hearing anything about this. and I think it's very difficult as it stands at the moment with recruitment and heaven knows what, to actually get other senior officers involved and moving it on. And you know, the one thing that I really do fear is that if we're not careful, all this effort could be lost. So keep pressing, keep asking for political support, because you'll get it as soon as we can actually get to it. But we've not, as a shadow executive, we've not had any reports or anything like that on any of this sort whatsoever, and it does deeply disturb me, that.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, if I could just reassure all members of existing East Northants and future North Northants, is that one thing that I have ensured as part of this process is we've got a very strong partnership and team, and they will carry this forward and drive it forward. So I'm sorting out to handover at the moment. I mean, so there'll be a very strong handover through the team into North Northants. I am confident that if any team can drive this forward, it will be the new North Northants Economic Development team. So they've got lots of good work behind them in terms of what we've done over the last year, but they've got major opportunities with the investment of up to £8 million to spend, and there's lots of good ideas in the team. So I'm confident that you'll see an acceleration of this over the coming year. And I think you're absolutely right. It needs to be. It's not only about the team on the ground. It's about just how it's led at the front as well, from the officer side and our members. But I am confident that will happen as part of Future Northants, as this has to be, you know, the economic recovery. The economic recovery has to be front and centre of what North Northants is about in the next year or so plus.
Okay, yeah, thank you all for that.
So, Chair, if I go on to the next half of the next half of the report, there's a little bit more.
I was going to say that, Greg, you're all right. That's absolutely fine. I know you are one like me for getting on with it, and I appreciate you just moving on, just like I was. So yes, it's quite self-explanatory, but yes, crack on.
Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. So we go on to just the second half is about the finances. So if you go into section 10, and you'll see where the spend is at the moment across the different areas, which is where it is, and it's accelerating as we expect, and all the commitments are coming forward. What the key stats really from information, and I'll take any questions on that, but really the actual the key element for a decision tonight is we've actually, you know, as a council, we put ourselves out there, and as members you put yourself out there and you back this initiative with a large sum of money. Last July, when everyone else was thinking about it, we acted. But the opportunity now is, because of the additional restricted grant, is to use that money instead, because as I said, we've got 2.73 million, and even with the 700 or 800 odd thousand of spend that we're going to give out in grants, and even if we take forward £1.5 million plus for next year, there's still some funding there that we could actually use to fund all the work we've done. So it's a bit of and I'll leave it to Glenn and with Amy to explain it, but we can move the money around so it gives a bit more flexibility. But so that's the main question for you to think about. But maybe Glenn, if you want to explain that as well.
I think it's self-explanatory, to be honest, but unless members don't understand, but I think it's quite straightforward. It is moving money around, but we might as well use the ARG money rather than our own reserves. I mean, it won't solve Richard's dilemma, because it's still more money for North Northants, but you can't, one way or another. It's still worth doing, in my view. So unless anybody wants a greater explanation, I'll move to the recommendations if everybody's all right. Glenn, are you supporting that, or you want a greater explanation? You're all muted, so.
Thank you. No, I don't want a greater explanation. I did find it very clear. I just wanted to add my note to Greg, which was to say that he mentioned the Enterprise Centre once or twice already. It's turned out to be even more important than we thought it was going to be when we first started the project. I particularly want to thank him for his expertise and the way he's driven it through. And while I'm at it, it would be most remiss of me not to mention Glenn and Catherine and Amy, who are present at this meeting, and others, and the Vice Chairman, David Jenny. And I was particularly pleased, if I may, this is the last opportunity. Working Party is finished. The Finance Sub is about to finish in terms of its longevity. I was particularly pleased that we were able to hold the last meeting of the Working Party at the Enterprise Centre itself. It was most fitting that we should do so. And in hindsight, especially with the loss of our friend Roger, it was delightful to see him there. And the building presents an epitaph for him and a badge of honour for the rest of us. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for those. Thank you for those comments, Glenville. If everybody's okay on all that now, if we move to the recommendations, which is 12.1, obviously A is to note the progress to date, and then B is to approve the ARG restrictions grant funding to replace the use of our risk reserve. And we just won't tell Councillor Lewis that just puts more money in Northant's pockets. So if everybody's happy with everybody's happy with that logical switch, can we have a show of hands? Everybody happy in general?
Yes. We don't have to be happy to. We don't have to be happy to vote for it, but we'll vote for it anyway.
There's a logic to it, so it does make sense. So
yes,
thank you for that. Thank you, Greg. That's all moved.
If I keep Councillor Lewis's tax down next year.
Before we move into the quiet section, Louise, I think while we're in public section, as this is the last meeting of the Finance and Performance Subcommittee, I just think I personally would like to minute a thanks to all the different teams, the Economic Development team, the Customer Communities team, and certainly the Finance team. You know, Glenn and everybody down, Finance Manager, Amy and Catherine. Certainly for the last 8-10 years, it's not always been a subcommittee. It started as a working party, but I certainly would like to move a written thank you to everybody who supported this committee and all the reporting in the last 10 years. And certainly, I'm sure there'll be comments at Policy and Resources, but certainly in relation to the financial reporting and keeping everybody informed on this council of the good work we've done in relation to the finance and all the work we do. So I'd certainly like to minute of thanks if anybody would like to support that from a member point of view.
Yes, fully support the comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, on that note then, because I wanted that on the public record, if we now can move into private session for the last item. If everybody's happy to move to exclude the public and press.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if you just wait, obviously wait the usual 3 or 4 minutes for the go live gone.